the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
This city has been for years and will remain a sanctuary city.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Regular viewers know that early in the year I have tried to focus on local people and issues that will be important in 2017. None is more important than the Cincinnati mayoral election. Rather than wait until just before the primary in May or the general election in November, when I have the candidates on at the same time for a debate, I decided to begin the year with a series of interviews which allow each candidate to discuss more thoroughly their vision and record. In the past few weeks, I have been joined by Rob Richardson Jr. and Yvette Simpson, both of whom have declared their candidacy. This morning, I am joined by the incumbent mayor, John Cranley, who is in the final year of his first term as mayor. From 2000 until 2009, Mr. Cranley served as a member of the Cincinnati City Council. He earned his law degree and Master's of Divinity from Harvard University and was a co-founder and first administrative director of the Innocence Project at the University of Cincinnati College of Law. John, welcome back to Newsmakers.
It's good to be back.
The sanctuary city question has sort of dominated this week, even though I didn't know it was coming up exactly the way it did. You wrote a very powerful letter to the editor that appeared, I think, on Monday. Mm-hmm. You made the announcement. Why now did you declare this? Because over the past few years, you had been supporting the sort of immigrant-friendly task force, helped found that, initiated. We've done several shows on that, most recently the Cincinnati Compass. Why did you feel it was time to come out and declare this as Cincinnati as a sanctuary city?
You know, there are times when you have to give voice to people that don't have voices. And the fact is, when President Trump issued the executive order indefinitely banning the resettlement of Syrian refugees, over 500,000 have been killed. We've seen the pictures of washed up children on Mediterranean beaches. There was a real sense of if no one's going to speak up for those who have no voices, who will? And we largely a symbolic gesture, but one that I think is important. You know, Cincinnati was the landing spot of the Underground Railroad. We have been a sanctuary city, meaning we've embraced freedom and the Statue of Liberty principles our entire history. Doesn't mean we're perfect, but I think, you know, when there is an effort nationally to demonize Christian values of being a sanctuary for those who are suffering and fleeing oppression and suffering, it's important for us to stand up for what I view to be these Christian values of sanctuary and helping those who can't help themselves.
We know there was opposition. You got pushback, and let's just listen to a few of the people who spoke out against what you did.
We have elected officials pick and choose what laws they want to enforce.
Arresting and convicting illegal immigrants of crime and letting them stay in the country puts a strain on our law enforcement that it cannot handle.
Over our dead body will Cincinnati become a sanctuary city.
What's your reaction to that?
It's unfortunate that people twist and turn. You know, our critics have said we're not going to pick and choose what laws to enforce. Well, they're right about that. We are following all federal laws. Let me be clear to your viewers. We have not and we will not violate federal law. And so that is a talking point of people who are supporting the indefensible ban on Syrian refugees who have and should be properly vetted before they get here. But this is a humanitarian crisis, and so instead of dealing with what can't be defended, which is saying no more to refugees, they're trying to say two things that are not true. One, they're trying to say that we're not going to follow federal law. False. We absolutely are following federal law.
Because enforcement of immigration law is a federal responsibility.
Well, it's a federal responsibility, but we when asked, we always cooperate with federal law, and we don't violate federal law. There's nothing.
Even under sanctuary city.
Even a sanctuary city is a symbolic designation that we're proud of because we need to stand with people who are being turned away. The second issue that's a total red herring is the idea that we'll lose federal funding. That is not true. The executive order that President Trump issued, which I oppose, but even with that executive order, they define cutting off federal funding in ways that just do not apply to the city of Cincinnati at all. So I know there's a lot of scare tactics out there that we're going to lose federal funding, but we researched this. We are standing in solidarity with the refugee community, who I believe had to have people standing with them because right now the sentiment, I think, is inhumane. Is
the shift, because back in November of 2015, after some attacks in France, and Governor Kasich came out saying he didn't want Syrian refugees, and you agreed with him at that time.
No, I just said that there should be proper vetting, and within 48 hours, I talked to the Obama administration, and they assured me of the vetting, and within 2 days of saying, of course we should make sure, and of course we should have proper vetting. Within 2 days of making the statement about, hey, do we have proper vetting? We spoke to the Obama administration, and we were convinced that they had proper vetting in place.
Okay, so you think the vetting is fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. Over the past 4 years, what are you proudest of? 3.5 years. What are you proudest of that you feel like you have accomplished?
Well, big picture, we have dramatically seen an increase in the number of jobs, high-profile deals like GE, which I helped to personally negotiate.
On the banks?
On the banks, a big new tall building, but also a reduction in child poverty of 5%. I ran on the first press conference I had when I ran for mayor was to launch my Hand Up initiative at Cincinnati Cooks, which is a wonderful program that helps people learn how to be cooks. And not by itself, but it has contributed to a reduction in child poverty of 5% over the last 4 years. So I think jobs are always the most important thing, and so bringing in new jobs both at the high end, like GE, and helping people get into jobs at the lower economic rung are what I'm always most proud of.
You initiated the Childhood Poverty Collaborative. They, I don't know, 5 months ago, had a report that came out. I had people on at that time, and we talked about the statistics. I don't want to get into statistics. Are you happy with the accomplishments and the progress that collaborative is making?
Well, the collaborative is hoping to be operational by July of this year, which is a different effort. And I'm a co-chair, so I'm very proud of it. Yes, and I'm optimistic about what's coming out of that. But that's going to be operational July 1. But 3 years ago, we started with city funds, the Hand Up initiative, which invests in job training, proven job training projects like Cincinnati Cooks and Cincinnati Works and the Urban League SOAR program. And that has put over 1,000 families back into the workforce and has made a real difference in reducing child poverty over the last 4 years. So there's a lot of other things I'm proud of, but those are always the most important things.
Yeah, all right. Is there something in the past 4 years that you wish you had a do-over, a mulligan? That you wish that didn't happen the way you wanted it to happen?
Well, obviously, it was out of my control, but as you know, I thought that the streetcar investment was not worth the return, and I did everything in my power to stop it, but I was overturned by council. I respect the process and respect the fact that I was outvoted in a veto-proof majority, but I still think that was not worth the money.
Where are you on that right now?
Well, obviously, I'm proud that under our administration we have brought it on time and under budget, and I've done everything in my power after I was overturned to make it successful, including, most importantly, that the original plan that I inherited was going to shut down the streetcar every night at 10 p.m. I predicted, and turned out to be right, that it would be most popular on the weekends as a bar hopping tool, and for games and for music hall and for Reds and Bengals and Rheingeist, all these wonderful establishments. And so I was able to get it, and I was criticized when I suggested that it should stay open until 2 a.m. And they ended up compromising at 1 a.m. But I still think it should stay open until 2 a.m. because that's when it's got the most ridership.
Okay. What about the park levy? You proposed a park levy. It did not pass. It was a very lively campaign. How do you look back on that?
I look back on that as we asked the voters and they said no, and we move on to something else. Having said that, the vision that our parks and green spaces are a way to revitalize neighborhoods is a proven concept. The Riverfront Park, I think, is the most spectacular riverfront park in America. The revitalization of Washington Park has helped spark the renaissance of Over the Rhine. And during the All-Star Game in 2015, we had Major League Baseball paid for neighborhood events in a lot of our parks, like Kennedy Heights and Madisonville and Walnut Hills and Price Hill. And those were some of the most exciting events for those neighborhoods. And so I still believe that investing in our parks and green space helps bring the community and neighborhoods together. So I still support the vision, but I will listen to the voters, and we will focus on other priorities.
If you came back to that, would you want to change the substance of the proposal you made? Because a lot of the opposition was about giving too much power, too much discretionary power over the funding that would be raised to the mayor's office. Would you change some? Would you change some of that? And secondly, would you change the campaign itself? Because I have to tell you, the campaign commercial that ran didn't focus on Riverfront Park, the Washington Park. It didn't show all that had been accomplished. It was really, very honestly, focused on you. And was that a bad tactic?
Well, first of all, that was not true about the statements about the too much power. That was a distortion that the opponents put out. But putting that aside, my focus is on reducing crime, putting more cops on the street, expanding minority inclusion. We have taken from an average of 2% of contracts that go to African American businesses in the city to over 17% in 3 years.
And that's one of the first things that you initiated was a review of that policy.
Exactly. So we're looking forward, not backwards. And the fact is that we're focused on jobs, reducing poverty, putting more cops on the street, expanding minority inclusion, and taking the renaissance of downtown Over the Rhine to neighborhoods, as opposed to spending more money on things that are narrow, like expanding the streetcar, which I oppose. So what we want to do is continue to focus on jobs, safety, inclusion, and spreading the renaissance of downtown Over the Rhine to all of our neighborhoods.
One last question about sort of this first term. Back when you were running 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, you, in a debate that I moderated in June of that year before the election, I raised the question about what were the qualities of a new police chief, because that was an open position at the time, that we ought to be looking for. And your response was the city shouldn't, Milton Dohoney, who was the city manager at the time, should not appoint anybody. That was your appointment once you got elected. I pushed back at that moment and said, it's not the mayor's appointment, it's the city manager's appointment. He said, well, you disagree with me. So given all that happened, did you give Chief Blackwell a chance? He wasn't your candidate. He was appointed by the former city manager. Did he ever really have a chance?
Absolutely. We all worked as hard as we could with him. The city manager conducted a climate assessment. The climate assessment showed that the police force was deeply demoralized. In addition, you had very courageous city employees who came forward and talked about very specific cases of abuse, emotional abuse. And it was clearly the right decision for the city manager to make a change. But absolutely. Having said that, under Chief Elliot Isaac, we have seen a 10% reduction in serious shootings in 2016. We've added more cops to the street. We're focusing on repeat violent offenders. And I spent a lot of the year walking with citizens on patrol, working with our outreach workers out of CHRC, really being out and about with our brave police officers and community leaders as we try to continue to reduce the violence even further.
Related to that, to the Blackwell situation, 6-7 weeks ago, it was revealed that the settlement, the financial settlement, had not been revealed. Was that mishandled?
Yes, yeah, I said so at the time. I had nothing to do with that, but I think it should have been released immediately.
You really didn't have anything to do with that? You didn't know that it, your answer at the time was you assumed that it had gone through the courts and been registered in the courts, and the press should have picked that up? Is that what you still think?
I thought it was released, and it should have been released. It was a mistake. There's no question. I've already said that.
Okay, very good. Stay right there. We're going to come back and talk about some things that people are talking about the future. Stay tuned. We have take a quick break, but Mayor Cranley will be right back on the other side. Welcome back. I'm joined this morning by Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley, who will run this year for a second term as mayor. Let's turn to the question of Metropolitan Sewer District. It's been one of these questions that's been aggravating for both the Hamilton County and for the city. Lots of controversy about how to handle it and where we go in the future, because the agreement signed back in 1967 is about to run out. Where do you think we are on this with working out a new agreement between the county and the city?
Well, I believe that the election of Denise Driehaus, who I supported and is a great public servant, will be a breath of fresh air. Now, I also worked well with her predecessor, so I'm not trying to insult him in any way. But I do think that the fact that the majority has changed at the county is going to allow a breakthrough in negotiations with us, and I am cautiously optimistic that we will find a way to end the bickering and put the ratepayer first and make the environmental cleanups that are required under federal law more efficient and more timely, because this dysfunctional fighting isn't helping anybody, especially the ratepayer.
What do you, in your mind, what would you like to sort of see as the principles of a new relationship or a renewed relationship? I'm not sure what the right adjective there is. Defining responsibility between the county and the city.
Well, I think that the main issues for the city are ensuring that our pension deal, which I was tempted earlier when you asked me what I was most proud of. Mm-hmm. People forget that when I was elected that we faced an $800 million unfunded pension liability. We were potentially facing bankruptcy. S&P and Moody's had downgraded our credit right before I was elected for the first time in my lifetime. And under our leadership, I was able to get concessions out of the union, out of retirees, which was not easy. The city put a lot more money into the pension, to be fair, but through shared sacrifice, we solved the pension crisis, which, it's a removal of a negative, so it doesn't necessarily make your life better on a daily basis, but had we not, it had been kicked, the can had been kicked down the road for so long that if we hadn't dealt with it, it would have caused us a lot of problems. So I'm very proud of that fact, and then since then we've gotten an upgrade from S&P and Moody's. So I tell you all that because, as it relates to the future of MSD, the city's most important objective is ensuring that the city pension deal, which was reached in federal court, is not violated or hurt by any change in operation and ownership of MSD on a going forward basis. But having said that, I'm confident, based on extensive conversations with the county commissioners, Driehaus and Portune, that they are equally committed to that. So that's a huge relief, and I think that makes negotiations a lot more likely to come to a good outcome. Any sense of timing? How quickly does this happen? How quickly does something have to happen? I know we're under an existing contract, which is an agreement 40 years old, which supposedly runs out this year. So what do we have to do? Is there a timing that we have to get to? And if so, what do you think the timing is on this? We're working on it, literally having discussions on a weekly basis, but I don't really want to get into the prediction basis because I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver. So I don't want to put a timeline on it. But I'm confident that we will be spending a lot of time in 2017. Before the 50-year agreement between the city and county runs out in April of 2018. So it'll certainly be done by then. Okay. Just a technical question on the MSD.
and that is probably the most elaborate of all their projects, is in South Fairmount with the groundwork project. A lot of buildings have come down. People who have gone through South Fairmount know. Where do we stand on that? Is the vision going to be implemented there? Are we going to daylight the stream? Are we going to get that sort of water feature into South Fairmount?
Yeah, it's a hybrid solution, environmentally friendly. And the more you can daylight, the more money you save on huge, expensive underground basins. And so I don't think there's a major dispute on that issue.
Okay, good. I fronted a lot of public meetings over there, so I care about it personally, that we get to it. Another thing that's in the future is the sort of metro. There's a proposal to reorganize, make Metro more effective on a countywide basis, regional basis, really. But that also involves changing the funding model, getting away from just funding, or the primary funding being the earnings tax in the city of Cincinnati, to some other type of sales tax, probably at least countywide, yet undefined in terms of size. Where do you stand on this? How important is this as an issue? Do you agree with the direction that sort of Metro is going?
Look, the busing and expanded bus service is critical to the future of our region. Buses get people to and from their jobs and their homes, and we have an insufficient bus system. We're one of the worst funded bus systems in the country. There's no question that a bus-only solution is critical to the future of the economy and the city. And I say bus only because if you put in expansion of the streetcar or anything else, you will help less people because it's a lot cheaper to expand buses than it is to pay for the streetcar. And so it'll be very difficult to convince county voters to do a sales tax for buses. The city would see an income tax reduction that goes with that. So city voters and city workers who could live in Green Township and work in the city,
right, and pay it,
and pay the income tax in the city, would see a net reduction in taxes, which would also be fair because it's not fair for the city to pay for the regional bus system. Most counties in the country have a regional countywide sales tax. So if the voters approve that, then the city worker could see a net reduction in taxes. At the same time, see a 40% increase in funding, local public funding for bus service. So you can see a great expansion. Because if a job's in the suburbs or in the city, we want people to get to and from their job and to their home. So a regional model that would increase funding from roughly $50 million to $75 million would see a huge increase in bus service. But I do think it's important, and I think it's an important issue in this race, that all candidates be crystal clear that it has to be bus only and not include other things that are too expensive and will not help as many people as expanded bus service.
Assuming that it's still under review, let's just put the streetcar aside, it's bus only. Do you think it's ready to go to the ballot this fall? Do you want to see it on the ballot this fall if possible?
It's clear that it's needed, and I'm open and fine with it happening this year. I'll support it whenever it goes. SORTA will make that decision, and candidly, SORTA is a creature of the county, and so they'll have to be involved. So I'm open to it, and I'm going to support it, assuming it's bus only, whenever it comes forward.
So a poison pill would be if it also included an expansion of the streetcar. You would be opposed.
I think that I want to help as many people as possible, and streetcars are a lot more expensive than buses. So we can help a lot more people if we limit it to buses. And I think that if we're going to ask taxpayers to raise their sales tax for it, then I think it needs to be the most efficient plan. Obviously, it's up to the voters in the end.
Okay. John, thank you very much. We're out of time,
Yeah.
but be back several times this year
Yeah.
as we move through this, and maybe for other things as well. To read more about John Cranley, check out his website at johncranley.com. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us next week to meet the men and the women working to shape our region for a better future. Have a good week.